everyone, my name is Fraeya and welcome to my broom closet. This video is a bit different from the rest of my videos. If you're new here, I am a real witch pagan. I've been researching and practicing witchcraft since I was 13. I mostly make videos about closet witchcraft, that is witchcraft that is practiced in secret. But I do want to start making other videos as well. And I freaking love iceberg videos, as I'm sure you do. But I couldn't find one on witchcraft and paganism and spirituality, so I just decided to make my own. I put it on Reddit, it got a great response. A couple people asked me to make a video explaining all the entries. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing today. I've actually made a few corrections to the one on Reddit and added a few entries as well. So I'm just going to be going through this iceberg and explaining everything. So I just have a few formalities to go over. I won't explain what an iceberg is because I'm sure you are well familiar with what an iceberg is by now. So I'm just going to go into a few disclaimers, formalities, all that kind of stuff. So this iceberg mostly describes Western influenced witchcraft and the subject that entails, like Wicca, paganism, New Age spirituality, some parts of occultism. I have omitted most Eastern influence concepts, such as chakras, kundalini, reiki, because as I am myself a white British ex-Christian, I haven't had much exposure or experience with Eastern concepts, so I'd rather just leave them to someone who knows a bit more than I do. So what is witchcraft? I should probably explain that before we get into the iceberg, right? Witchcraft is a very broad term that encompasses a lot of different beliefs and practices. At its most basic, witchcraft is the practice of casting spells and performing magical rituals to achieve certain goals. Witchcraft varies vastly over many different cultures, demographics, countries, and even individuals. So it's very hard to define succinctly, but I'm hoping that at least the first two tiers of this iceberg will give you a good idea of what witchcraft is. As you may know already, historically witchcraft has been associated with evil and all things bad, but nowadays it is considered neutral and even positive. All entries on this iceberg are either going to be directly or loosely associated with witchcraft. That is modern day witchcraft that is practiced primarily in Europe and the USA. Some of these entries are going to be rabbit holes within themselves, so believe me when I say this iceberg is basically only the beginning, just surface level knowledge. It goes much deeper, but I couldn't possibly explain absolutely everything and, capture all the nuances of each entry. Some of these entries also do have a lot of overlap with New Age spirituality, but a lot of witches do practice them as well. If that's the case, where there's a lot of overlap, sometimes I'll just say spiritual practitioners instead of witches because it's not exclusive to witchcraft. There's also a lot of topics here that you might be expecting, but they're not included on the iceberg, and this is mostly because they are just included under umbrella terms much higher up in the iceberg. So for instance, paganism, which is huge umbrella term that covers a lot of different beliefs and concepts, kind of tied into witchcraft but not quite. That honestly deserves an iceberg within itself. So there might be some stuff that you might be expecting here but don't come up, and that's mostly because of that reason. There are also going to be a lot of bad words that YouTube does not like in this video. I will be censoring some terms, but you should still be able to know what I'm talking about from context. Maybe if this video does well, I'll make a Patreon and upload an uncensored version there, but I honestly don't know. But yeah, because of that, it kind of goes without saying that this is a trigger warning for just mentions of things like ritual abuse and racist ideologies, harmful ideologies. I will not be going into any details, but if you are easily triggered by just mentions of that kind of stuff, then viewer discretion is advised. One last thing I want to talk about is the confidence rating for each entry. For each entry, I have provided a level of confidence on my knowledge on that entry. A full moon is gonna mean I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I might even have personal experience with it wherever applicable. A last quarter moon means that I pretty much know what I'm talking about, but I might lack nuance or experience. Some details might be slightly wrong or just incomplete. A first quarter moon means that I kind of know, but I had to do some research and it was a bit hard to explain. So on a first quarter moon, I might misconstrue or misrepresent some things. And a new moon means I know basically nothing about this, couldn't find anything on it, or it's just a crazy conspiracy theory, just speculation and hearsay. So that's the confidence rating level, just so you know. Finally, last thing before we get into the iceberg, please feel free to ask me any genuine questions about witchcraft. You know, things like clarifications or just how to get started on witchcraft if you're interested in it. I don't provide services for people, so I don't cast spells for people or anything like that. But if you've got a genuine question, I am happy to help wherever I can. So with all that said, let's get into the iceberg. Tier 1, Cowan. Cowan simply means uninitiated and is used to describe the uninitiated general public, or muggles as they are otherwise known. This level refers to the general public perception and basic assumptions people make about witchcraft based on religious scriptures, books, movies and TV shows. Exodus 22:18. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. This entry refers to the common belief among the public that all witchcraft and magic is evil, and anyone who does it will go to hell, as described in the Bible and other religious texts. Popular media. The general public perception of witches through their appearances in popular media like Harry Potter, The Wizard of Oz, Disney movies, Shakespeare, and other movies and literature. Psychic gifts. Most people are aware of people who claim to have psychic gifts, like clairaudience, clairvoyance, and mediumship. Most people think these people are faking, and a lot of them are, to be fair. Many witches have psychic gifts, although they are not a requirement to be a witch, and many witches do not have psychic gifts. Malleus Maleficarum, also known as the Hammer of Witches. Although not many people are familiar with the name, this is the famous document published in 1487 that condemned witches and recommended that they be burned as a remedy for the evils of witchcraft. The Burning Times. The Burning Times was a period of time peaking between 1580 and 1630, where the witch trials took place and so-called witches were burned at the stake for their crimes. Hex the Moon. In July of 2020, a bunch of inexperienced witches, known as baby witches, took to the witchy side of TikTok, known as WitchTok, to claim that they were hexing the Fae and the moon. Hexing, by the way, is a type of spell whereby you send a whole bunch of harmful energy to someone or something. This blew up and even made it onto the feeds of mainstream TikTok and seen by people who have no idea what modern witchcraft even is. I'm sure I don't need to explain why hexing the moon is a dumb idea, but to give you a rundown, Wiccans believe that the moon is a physical manifestation of their deity. So not only are you trying to curse an inert planet, you are also highly offending the hundreds of thousands of people who revere the moon as their deity. It's about the same as cursing Jesus or something. Needless to say, this gave a very bad impression of witchcraft to the general public, and just about every experienced witch condemned the act and were highly offended. Hey, sorry, just butting in here. It's me from the future, I'm just editing right now. This isn't 100% confirmed, but apparently the whole hexing the moon thing was a hoax, and it was just a rumor started to mock the witchcraft community. So basically there's no actual videos of the witches like saying they're gonna do it. It's kind of just a rumor that started circulating. Just thought I'd mention that in case you know, thought this was like real or something. In case you were ever wondering, the moon is fine, and the deity probably just sent the negative energy back to the offending witches. Unfortunately, this was not the first time an inexperienced witch pissed off the entire witchcraft community. In 2015, a user known as Ender Darling posted in a private Facebook group about human remains she had been stealing from cemeteries in New Orleans. She justified her actions by saying that the bones had naturally reached the surface, and therefore they were gifts from the earth. Unfortunately, the truth of why the bones had risen to the surface is because the majority of bodies buried in the cemetery belonged to low-income families of primarily Black and African American ethnicities, and therefore weren't able to afford sufficient burial that could withstand the flooding that is commonplace in New Orleans. As a member of the Facebook group put it, quote, "You are implementing white supremacist and colonialist tactics to do your bidding," unquote. Thankfully, these kinds of controversies don't happen very often, but I think it goes without saying that you should practice witchcraft responsibly and apply your common sense. I'm gonna hop in with some webcam portions throughout this video just to provide commentary and kind of break it up a little bit. So in terms of this stupid Hex the Moon entry, I just want to say, can we all just collectively agree as witches that robbing graves is bad and stop using stuff without permission? Get permission to use human bones. And can we also stop hexing literal deities as well? That would be nice. With recent political issues in the Middle East, there's been a handful of witches trying to curse Allah for some reason. I don't even need to explain why that's a bad idea. That's like trying to curse the Christian God. Why would you even do that? Why would you want to? Why? Just why? So can we stop doing stupid things? Thank you. Black magic. Black magic is magic that is practiced with ill intent or otherwise intent to harm. Most mainstream religious people believe that all magic is black magic, but I will elaborate on this further into the video. Paganism. Paganism is an umbrella term for religions outside of the mainstream world religions that encompass a collection of pre-Christian beliefs and practices. Pagan began as a derogatory term, but modern-day pagans are reclaiming it. There is a large overlap between paganism and witchcraft, although not all pagans are witches, and should be treated separately in most contexts. I'm including it on the iceberg though, due to the large overlap. There are many different types of paganism, including Wicca, Celtic paganism, Norse paganism, Hellenism, Kemetism, Slavic paganism, and Odinism, just to name a few. Folk magic. Folk practices that many people have grown up with, but do not realise that they have roots in witchcraft and paganism. People who practice folk practices are known as cunning folk, and historically have had many positive associations. This entry also refers to superstitions and old wives' tales. Wider, more well-known examples of folk practice include throwing salt over the shoulder to reverse bad luck, and hanging a horseshoe above the door for protection. Pretty much any old practice you may recall your grandparents doing is probably an example of folk magic, but some more documented traditions include Appalachian folk magic, powwow, granny women, and hoodoo or root work. Wicca. Wicca is a pagan religion created by Gerald Gardner during the early 20th century and made public in 1954. It is loosely based on the ancient beliefs and practices of the people of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales before the Christianization in the 15th and 18th centuries. Witchcraft is deeply incorporated into the religion as a whole, but it is worth noting that witchcraft is not a religion in of itself, but Wicca is. You can have Wiccans who are witches, but also witches who are not Wiccans. Wicca is a duotheist, earth-worshipping religion that promotes peace and love. They believe in the god and goddess, otherwise known as the Lord and Lady, and they believe that their deities are physical manifestations of nature. Their deities are also henotheistic, which means that Wiccans believe that other deities exist as kind of facets of the Lord and Lady. Therefore, you may find some Wiccans referring to their deities as different names like Gaia, Diana, Artemis and Apollo, for example. Wicca also has a number of core beliefs like reincarnation, the Sabbats, and the Great Rite. Traditional Wiccans gather in what are known as covens, a group of typically 13 who practice rituals and cast spells together. There are 3 degrees of initiation in a Wiccan coven. The first degree initiates you as an official member. Second degree initiates are allowed to become a leader of the coven, and third degree initiates can start their own coven and call themselves high priests or high priestesses. There are also solitary Wiccans who do not belong to a coven and typically self-initiate. Tier 2, Enthusiast. The tip of the iceberg for people who want to get into witchcraft and New Age spirituality. This tier comprises of mostly basic beginner practices and sources of knowledge. Spells. Probably a pretty well-known fact that witches cast spells, but what is misunderstood by the general public is what spells actually consist of. Spells are no different from prayers, but instead they are acted out. The primary purpose of a spell is to make the witch's desire known to the universe or the deities that they work with, and to increase chances of the spell working they do various things like energy raising, chanting, reciting poems, dancing, using physical tools, and asking their ancestors or spirit guides to help them. Colour. Witches believe that different colours have different meanings and purposes due to the different levels of vibrations they give off, since colours are merely different wavelengths of light. Lower vibrational colours like red are mostly associated with the physical body, lust and ego. Higher vibrational colours like purple are associated with the higher spirit, wisdom and ascension. Dream work. Many witches and spiritual practitioners start with dream journaling and manipulating their dreams by lucid dreaming. Some people even have prophetic dreams. This is overall an ideal practice for beginners and a prerequisite for some practices lower down in the iceberg. Empaths. Empaths are people who are highly sensitive to other people's emotions. They often feel other people's emotions as if they were their own. Everyone is empathetic to some degree, but empaths experience empathy so extremely that a lot of them use spiritual practices and witchcraft to shield and protect themselves. Many empaths practice witchcraft or some form of New Age spirituality. Fluff. Fluff refers to any magic that is not real. In essence, Harry Potter magic like transformation, levitation and transfiguration, werewolf transformation spells and all that jazz. People who believe this stuff is real are called fluffs or fluffies, and they often comprise of delusional preteens. Magic. Magic, spelled with a K, refers to natural magic, the kind of magic that real witches use. It is a kind of metaphysical force that has confines within the laws of physics and reality as most humans experience it. Some witches believe that magic is an external spiritual force, whereas some witches believe it is an internal process connected to psychology and the subconscious. Every witch has a different belief about what exactly magic is, so it is hard to define. Many witches agree that you need to bypass the conscious mind to access the subconscious mind in order to work with magic. This is often referred to as achieving an altered state of consciousness. I just also wanted to quickly mention that magic with a K and magic without a K is also sometimes used interchangeably. This precise spelling with the K was coined by Aleister Crowley just to differentiate between natural magic that witches use and fantasy magic in books, movies, that kind of stuff. Just so you know, not every witch does spell it with a K. Some people even find that cringy, so magic and magic is used interchangeably. You just get the meaning from context. Intuition. Intuition is the inner voice, sometimes described as gut feelings. A lot of witchcraft requires one to be in tune with their intuition and do as their inner voice guides. It is a skill that can be developed by anyone and is related to psychic gifts. Examples of intuitive practices include intuitive drawing and intuitive cooking. Auras. a New Age spiritual belief that all objects and living beings give off vibrations in the form of an aura. You can learn to read auras, and this is considered an ideal beginner practice to get introduced to sensing and controlling energy, which is often necessary for witchcraft. The law of attraction. The law of attraction is a branch of New Age spirituality wherein practitioners hold the belief that like creates like. In essence, in order to draw something to you, you must first project that thing outwards. For example, positive thoughts draw positivity towards you, negative thoughts draw negativity towards you. You need to spend money to receive money, etc., etc. Sympathetic magic is a type of magic that works on the idea of the law of attraction. Tarot. Tarot is a popular system of divination. Tarot is a deck of exactly 78 cards that a practitioner will draw from for insight. The deck is split into the major arcana and the minor arcana, comprised of 22 and 56 cards respectively. The minor arcana is structured a lot like a deck of playing cards that I'm sure you're familiar with the exception of having an extra court card for each suit known as the knight. The suits are also renamed, but are equivalent to playing card suits. They are pentacles, cups, wands, and swords, which correspond with diamonds, hearts, clubs, and spades respectively. Each card has a different depiction on it that is associated with different meanings, and witches can also derive their own meanings using their intuition. The most famous tarot deck is the original Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but since its release in 1909, thousands of authors and artists have created their own decks with different illustrations and their own interpretations of the card's meanings. Tarot decks always contain exactly 78 cards, but decks with a different number of cards and different meanings do exist and are known as oracle decks. Book of Shadows. Many witches keep their knowledge in what is known as a Book of Shadows, also referred to as a grimoire. The term Book of Shadows was conceptualized in the 1970s in Wiccan circles, but has since spread to other paths and forms of paganism. They are traditionally written by hand in handcrafted books, but nowadays you can find grimoires in the form of ordinary notebooks and binders, and even electronic documents and websites. Types of witches. There are many different types of witches who follow different paths. Many beginners make the mistake of trying to find what kind of witch they are, but the truth is that it doesn't matter. Most witches just refer to themselves as a witch with no additional label, or at least eclectic witch, which means that they incorporate whatever practices and beliefs that resonate with them. Other types of witch include green witch, hedge witch, traditional witch, ceremonial witch, and secular witch, just to name a few. Witch does not equal woman. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to be a woman to be a witch. Anyone of any gender identity can be a witch, and it is a gender-neutral term. Also worth mentioning here is that anyone of any ethnic or cultural background can be a witch too. You do not need to be descended from witches, or even know what your ancestry comprises of. Meditation. Meditation is the practice of clearing your mind to achieve various goals, like calming yourself, receiving insight, or achieving an altered state of consciousness. It is an ideal beginner practice and a prerequisite for many practices in witchcraft. The Big Blue. The Big Blue refers to Raymond Buckland's complete book of witchcraft, so called because it is famously bright blue and very large. It is a popular book for beginner witches, although it has aged quite badly in some parts. It is also mostly about Wicca, which is different from witchcraft. Divination. Divination is the practice of gaining insight from the universe, deities, or spirits. There are many different systems of divination, including bibliomancy, tasseomancy, oomancy, cartomancy, and ceromancy, just to name a few. I also just want to clarify here that divination is not a matter of just seeing into the future. So witches can use divination to see what is likely to happen in the future, but they can't tell you what definitely will happen. Nothing is set in stone. The future is always changing based on our decisions from free will. Also, the power of divination is not in the tool itself. Like tarot cards, for example, they are not inherently magical or mysterious or spooky. It's just a deck of cards. The actual power of divination comes from the witch themselves. So pretty much every divination tool is just something that helps the witch to access her own insight. Some insight can be channeled through the witch, like from other sources, or just from the witch's mind, like maybe her subconscious. But the point that I need you to understand is that divination, the power of divination, comes from the witch, not the actual physical tools.
Crystals. This is a New Age practice of using crystals to heal or to charge and unblock energy centers in the body. Some witches believe that crystals contain the Earth's power and therefore have healing powers. Other witches believe it is just placebo, but still use them anyway. White magic. White magic is magic that is used with good intentions, for example healing and the good of all. One thing that I do want to explain here though, is that good and bad are subjective, so oversimplifying magic into black and white is not particularly useful to anyone other than the general public who think that all magic is bad. Black magic and white magic are outdated terms and generally only used to explain witchcraft to the general public. There is also the problem of the slightly racist connotations and the fact that black, as in the actual colour, is used for many objectively good things in witchcraft like protection. A more up-to-date term for black magic is baneful magic, but even this is an incomplete term since many practices associated with baneful magic are used for the greater good, such as banishing, which is often used for removing negative or stagnant energy.
To expand on the colour black being used for good things thing, I have a kind of funny story about this. So I was in like my favourite local witchy new age shop one time, and this super like, I don't want to say emo, but that's kind of what she looked like, goth girl kind of thing. She like just walked in and she like bought a couple black candles, and I don't know who this guy was, but he seemed to be friends with the shopkeeper, right? And he was just like, oh, I wouldn't mess around with it. She's gonna be doing some dark stuff there. I wouldn't use any black candles. And it was like, yo, black candles are literally used for protection magic, like, all the time. So just because you're using a black thing, black candle, black cloth, I don't freaking know. Just because you're using something black does not mean you're doing black magic. It doesn't mean it's evil. I just want to clear up that common misconception. It's not necessarily evil. There's a lot of things in witchcraft that people think are evil, but not necessarily, and the colour black is one of them.
Right hand path. This is a term that encompasses all mainstream spiritual practices, primarily those practiced with good intentions, like healing and positivity. Right hand path followers promote self-sacrifice, altruism, acceptance, and collectivism. Wiccans are known for following the right hand path only. Visualization. Visualization is the practice of creating a mental image that is intended to replicate your will or your goal. It is basically the same as using your imagination, except that visualization is intended to become real on either a spiritual or physical level. It is a necessary prerequisite for most things in witchcraft. Fun fact, aphantasics, or people who lack a mind's eye, can still practice visualization. It doesn't actually need a visual component. You can use your other senses like touch, smell, hearing, and taste.
For visualization, if you really struggle with having a lack of mind's eye or just really struggling with it in general, I really recommend reading chapter 2 of Robert Bruce's New Energy Ways. I will provide a link to that in the description. So that's a really good book, I really recommend it, and he just has a great way of explaining visualization.
Energy work. Energy work is the practice of sensing and manipulating energy. Everyone has an innate ability to sense and work with energy, but the skill needs to be cultivated in order to be useful. It is a necessary prerequisite for witchcraft and often involves meditation, breathing exercises, and visualization. Astrology. Astrology is a system of divination by stars and planets. It runs much deeper than the typical zodiac signs and horoscopes. Most beginner astrologers will learn about the big three, comprising of the sun, moon, and rising signs. To gain real insight from an astrological chart, one must also learn about the houses and aspects.
So again, just like any other method of divination, astrology is not set in stone. Astrologers will actually also use a lot of their own intuition when giving you a reading. If certain things come up in your chart, it doesn't mean that this is definitely true or this will definitely happen. Astrology is more like a way of assessing what cards you were dealt when you were born, but you still have control over what happens to you, your life, and your personality. So astrology is not set in stone, it's just something that we can use for insight.
Scott Cunningham. Scott Cunningham was a very popular Wiccan author. Most beginner Wiccans start by reading his works. The Threefold Law. The Threefold Law, also known as the Law of Three, is a Wiccan belief that all energy projected will return to you times 3. It is because of this law that Wiccans are peaceful and do not use curses. Not all witches are Wiccan, however, so not everyone follows the Threefold Law.
I do just want to add here, because I didn't make it clear in the voiceover, that a lot of witches do believe in some form of karma. What I mean by that is you receive back whatever you project outwards. So just because not every witch follows the Threefold Law, it doesn't mean that they don't believe in some kind of karma. It's actually very common. But again, there's also plenty of witches who don't believe in any kind of karma, any variation on that. It's honestly just down to personal preference, but I will say that belief in some kind of karma or retribution is the most common view among witches. So it's common, not always the Threefold Law, and some witches don't even believe in it.
Manifestation. Manifestation is a New Age spiritual practice where practitioners manifest their will by visualizing it or writing it down or some similar practice. It is the act of bringing something tangible into your life through attraction and belief. In essence, if you think about it, it will come. It mostly operates on the law of attraction. Runes. Runes is a system of divination using 24 stones or wooden pieces inscribed with the Elder Futhark alphabet. This alphabet is believed to have originated from the 1st century. It is a popular practice among those who follow Norse paganism and witchcraft. Pentacle. A pentagram is a 5-pointed star, and a pentacle is a pentagram enclosed within a circle. The pentacle has many negative connotations, but definitely does not deserve the bad rap. It is used in both white and black magic, and is mostly used to represent the 4 elements and spirit or magic. The pentacle can be used to charge objects with magical power, and for Wiccans it is a symbol of protection. An inverted pentacle can be used for hexing and cursing, but is actually mostly used for banishing. The inverted pentacle is also the symbol for 2nd degree initiation, a concept employed in traditional Wiccan covens. Tier 3, Dedicated. For witches who have mastered the beginner practices and dedicated themselves to their spiritual path, one's general perception of religion begins to crumble as they realise that not all is as it seems. Synchronicities. Synchronicities are related events that happen that confirm to the practitioner that they are on the right track, or that their spells and rituals are working. They typically manifest as a series of related events without causality, like personal messages for the practitioner that only they can interpret. It is a concept adopted by the New Age movement, and many witches look out for synchronicities as part of their craft. Familiars. Familiars are animals or spirits that assist witches in their craft. During the burning times, familiars were thought to be evil demons, but nowadays they are just special little helpers in the form of animals, most commonly cats. Familiars can be real physical pets or spiritual guides. Real familiars are not considered to be pets, more like animal companions with which the witch shares a deep connection. Sometimes familiars enter a witch's life randomly and inexplicably, but sometimes witches cast spells in order to summon a familiar. Past life regression. Past life regression is the practice of exploring one's past lives. It operates on the belief that we reincarnate and have many lives both in the relative past and in the relative future. Sigils. Sigils is a practice developed by Austin Osman Spare whereby you write your will as a short phrase, cross out the vowels and repeating letters, combine them into a glyph, and then charge and discharge the sigil using various methods, normally involving meditation or trance states, followed by destroying the sigil. It is a popular practice among those who practice chaos magic.
This isn't the only way to create a sigil, by the way. There's actually a lot of different ways. As long as you are somehow turning your will into just a little symbol, then it is a sigil. But there are like countless ways to do it. You can create your own way to do it. There's websites where you can create your sigil, randomly generate different symbols, that kind of stuff. So that's only one way to do it. There's lots of ways, but that way that I described in the voiceover was just the way that Austin Osman Spare described it.
Hexes and curses. Hexes and curses are a form of baneful magic. Some witches use witchcraft to curse or hex people who have wronged them. Not every witch practices baneful magic, and instead strictly uses white magic only. The terms curse and hex are often used interchangeably, with the exact meaning changing from practitioner to practitioner, but I personally view a hex to be a one-time bundle of negativity meant to ruin someone's week, and a curse to be more like a long-term kind of thing. Most curses do tend to wear off eventually though, unless the witch who cast the curse is exceptionally skilled. Fae. Fae are creatures described in Celtic mythology that inspired the fairy stories that we have today. Unlike fairies, Fae are made up of hundreds of different types of creatures and spirits that are not always friendly and happy. The Fae have different morals to humans, since morals are merely a human construct. This means that their customs are different, and humans and Fae don't always see eye to eye. Even the friendliest of Fae can be pranksters and tricksters, whereas other Fae can appear to be downright evil. There are a number of rules and customs one must follow if you are intent on communicating with the Fae, or there can be dire consequences. Some witches are undeterred, however, and regularly work with the Fae as part of their craft. It is not recommended for beginners though. Deities. Some witches work with deities as part of their craft. I'm always careful to say work with and not worship, since most witches do not consider themselves to worship their deities. This is because worship is associated with codependence and subordination, when Wiccans and witches view their relationship with deity as more equal and symbiotic. Working with deities in witchcraft is not compulsory, but is commonplace as deities are believed to help with making spells work. Not everyone does this so, with some witches being atheists, and some witches choosing only to work with deities as more like metaphors or psychological archetypes. Angelology. Angelology is the study of angels. Many spiritual practitioners work with angels as they are generally friendly and always want to assist humanity. Angel work is less common among witches, but some choose to work with them. Astral projection. Astral projection is the skill of perceiving and exploring the astral plane, normally done with meditative sleep states. It is a type of outer body experience where one's astral body temporarily leaves the physical body to explore the world on the astral plane. Weird. The simplest way to explain weird is that it's the Norse version of karma. Fate, destiny, and karma are arranged in a huge cosmic web maintained by the Nornir, or the Fates, who govern what is lawful and unlawful. Note that what is lawful is not always deemed moral. Weird is constantly shifting, constantly interconnecting, constantly being made and remade by our choices, and constantly impacting us as a direct result of our decisions. Your thoughts and actions are affected by, and can affect, previous and future generations respectively. Norse pagans believe that one must live honourably in order to have good weird. The understanding of weird is necessary for understanding how runes work and other Norse concepts. Sass witchcraft. Sass witchcraft stands for Skeptic, Agnostic, Atheist, Science-Seeking Witchcraft. Contrary to popular belief, you do not actually have to believe in deities, be religious, or even believe that magic is some sort of supernatural force. Some witches practice witchcraft harmoniously with science and logic. The term was coined by Reddit user Snowflake5297 in July 2019, and the Sass Witches subreddit now has nearly 30,000 followers as of this recording. Shamanism. Shamanism is an umbrella term for spiritual practices originating from native populations long before any kind of established religion. There are many types of shamanism. The reason for its inclusion on the iceberg is because a lot of witchcraft and paganism originated from shamanism, so it's a useful study for those who want to explore spirituality deeper. There's also a fair number of spiritual practitioners who start out practicing witchcraft, but later move on to shamanism due to the similarities. Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was a very famous occultist who created the Thelema religious movement, a movement created with intent to, quote, bring Oriental wisdom to Europe and to restore paganism in a purer form, unquote. It has magic deeply incorporated into the beliefs and practices and provided some influence for the creation of Wicca. Christian holidays have pagan roots. After getting into the study of occult and witchcraft, it does not take long for one to realise that all Christian holidays actually have pagan roots. This is due to the Christianization that took place in the 15th and 18th centuries, and pagan holidays were Christianized in order to incentivize pagans into converting. This iceberg entry is a prerequisite for lower entries. Donald Michael Craig. Donald M. Craig famously authored Modern Magic, which is a popular work among beginner ceremonial witches and magicians. It contains inspiration from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Kabbalah, and Thelema. Shadow work. Shadow work is a spiritual practice popularized by psychoanalyst Carl Jung that involves the practitioner exploring and unfurling their shadow aspects, that is, aspects of the self that are undesirable or that one does not want to acknowledge. Despite how ominous it sounds, it's actually quite a good practice for beginners and mostly involves journaling, therapeutic practices, and introspection. Left-hand path. Left-hand path refers to any practice that is adversarial to mainstream spirituality, in essence, practices meant to harm, or practices that mainstream spiritual movements do not condone. Left-hand path practitioners generally perpetuate egoism, individualism, skepticism, self-deification, dogma avoidance, and cultural apathy. Satanism. Satanism refers to a group of ideological beliefs based on Satan. Contrary to popular belief, the majority of Satans do not worship Satan as a literal god. The most popular or most documented form of Satanism is LaVeyan Satanism, a religion founded by Anton LaVey in 1966. The religion propagates a naturalistic worldview, seeing mankind as animals existing in an amoral universe. It promotes a philosophy based on individualism and egoism, coupled with social Darwinism and anti-egalitarianism. Satan, to them, is merely a metaphor or a positive archetype. So LaVeyan Satanists are actually atheists. Atheistic Satanism is known as rational Satanism, or just Satanism, as it is the only true form of Satanism according to the Church of Satan. True Satanism does not involve worshipping the devil, because actual Satanism encourages self-deification. LaVeyan Satanists also practice magic and witchcraft, which is split into lesser magic and greater magic, but they do not practice all the terrible things that Christians may have led you to believe. They do not perform sacrifices or molest children and animals. In fact, the abuse of children and animals is forbidden by the 11 satanic rules of the earth. Theistic Satanism does exist, but I will elaborate on that later. It is important to note that Satanism is not the same as devil worship. In fact, the founder of the First Church of Satan, John Orley, considers devil worship to be a symptom of psychosis. Fringe groups that are known for their neo-Nazi and racist anti-Semitic ideologies are largely condemned and rejected by rational Satanists, and indeed anyone who possesses a single shred of humanity. On a personal level, I do not consider these groups to be Satanists or witches. They're just assholes that probably belong in prison. I should also mention the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s, where a number of allegations of ritual abuse took place, and even a conspiracy theory that there were organised satanic groups performing large-scale rituals. However, there is little to no evidence to support this. There is no doubt a handful of pretend Satanists that did and still do perform ritualistic abuse today, but they by no means make up a large-scale organised group, and again are condemned and rejected by rational Satanists, and indeed anyone with a brain cell. I must reiterate that myself, I'm sure many agree with me, that these people are neither Satanists nor witches, but complete monsters that definitely belong in prison. Closed practices. Closed practices are a controversial and highly debated topic among modern-day witches on the internet. The problem stems from the fact that historically, native populations have lost many of their ancient beliefs and practices to colonization, so many people believe that the practices that exist today should be highly protected. However, many people believe that practices should be open to everyone, so we can celebrate our diversity. There is much complexity to this problem. Some practices are not unique to specific ethnic and cultural backgrounds. Some practices are a culmination of many different ethnic and cultural backgrounds, and some practices that have been previously exclusive to specific ethnic and cultural backgrounds have been brought into popularity and relative publicity. What muddies the waters even further is that some people who belong to these ethnic and cultural minorities say that it is okay to use their practices, whereas others do not. The witchcraft community cannot agree on the fine line between protecting ethnic and cultural heritage and racial and cultural segregation. Witchcraft generally allows people to practice whatever they choose and feels right according to their intuition, but should some practices only belong to minorities who had their ethnic and cultural practices stolen from them? One cannot have ownership over a specific herb, for example, but the heritage should still be respected. So how do we find the balance? This is what most witches are referring to when they say closed practice.
So I'm just going to give you some examples here so you have a bit more context for this issue. There's a divination practice called umancy, which is divination by eggs. This method of divination originated in Greece and Rome, but there is apparently some evidence that it was also practiced by ancient druids in Scotland as well. There is also variations of umancy in South and Southeast Asia and also Guatemala. So this would be an example of a practice that people think is tied to a certain culture or place, but is actually can be found in lots of different parts all over the world. So that is an example of a not closed practice. Another example is honey in jars. There's this really famous or popular hoodoo practice which is honey jars. It's just a type of jar that has honey and also other ingredients in it, designed to sweeten someone's attitude towards you. So it's to make someone like you, or if your boss is being hard on you, to make them, more polite and stuff like that. So that is a hoodoo practice, and hoodoo is often considered a closed practice because hoodoo is like a mixture of ancient African practices and also Judaism, Christianity, and basically it's a folk practice created by African Americans who were slaves and brought over from Africa to America, and they created their own folk practice that is a mixture of their ancient traditions and also the new traditions they came across when they came to America. It's often considered closed. It's not fully closed because again, like I said, it's a mixture of different things, Judaism, Christianity, it's often considered closed just because of its origins. Anyway, honey jar is a hoodoo practice, so people think it's closed, but honey, as in the ingredient, is just a super common household ingredient. Like, you probably have it in your house right now, and people will add it to their witch jars. Witch jars come from all different cultures, all over the world. Witch jars are very popular, and people will add it to their jars and then find out afterwards that it's a hoodoo thing, and then they think that they've done something wrong. But if one religion or folk practice has ownership over honey, I don't know what this world is coming to. Honey just makes sense. It attracts insects, it makes you happy, it, you know, releases all those endorphins, so it's just a common sense item to use in a spell jar. So yeah, let's say you grabbed this spell off of a hoodoo website, then yeah, you're making a hoodoo honey jar, and that might be closed depending on your opinion. But if you're literally just adding honey to a jar and it didn't even cross your mind, or you didn't even know that it's a type of hoodoo spell, you're not offending anyone, and it's mostly considered in the witchcraft community that it's totally fine to do, because ownership over honey, something as commonplace and household ingredient like that is not a closed practice. The final example I want to give you is white sage. So this is a sacred herb to Native Americans. You know, they cultivate it in a very specific way and they use it in a very specific way called smudging, but this practice has kind of been adopted by new age movements, and so it is rather commonplace to find in new age shops like bundles of white sage for smudging. But smudging is a very specific term used by Native Americans, and it's a very specific ritual. So this would be an example of something that is specific to a culture and ethnicity, but has been brought into popularity and now everyone uses it. But this isn't necessarily a good thing, because name something that Native Americans haven't had stolen from them. In the witchcraft community, this is generally considered a closed practice, but the problem is that it has been brought into popularity and people don't know where it comes from. Just to clarify something again, the act of using white sage isn't closed, it's the act of smudging. No specific religions or cultures or ethnicities have ownership over a single herb. You can still use white sage, but it is better to use things native to your local area. If white sage is native to your local area, then use it. It becomes a problem when you're calling it smudging when it's actually just smoke cleansing, because smudging is the Native American thing. You can still use white sage, but just, you know, be mindful of the whole Native American thing. Back to what I was saying. This is why it's such a large issue, because some practices are just popular and people just don't know, they have no idea where they come from. So sometimes you can be offending people, sometimes you think you're offending people but you're actually not. It's a huge issue, but those were 3 examples of how wide and complex this issue is. Like, some people think that some things are closed, some people don't think that other things are closed. So those are just 3 examples that kind of sum up the whole situation. Anyway, I'll stop talking, back to the video.
Tier 4, Adept. This is basically the point of no return if you've made it this deep into witchcraft and occultism. The cracks in reality are beginning to show, and rebuilding your spiritual, moral and religious beliefs from the ground up is necessary to progress. Leave your prejudices at the door and don't assume anything. Chaos magic. Chaos magic is a type of magic that works on the idea of chaos philosophy, summarised as results-driven magic, or anything goes.
There's also a pretty popular saying in the chaos community that goes, fuck around and find out, and that honestly sums up chaos magic pretty well.
Practitioners of chaos magic will make their own systems and just use the ones that bring results. This means that there is no specific set of practices for chaos magic, as the possibilities are endless, but common practices do include sigils, thought forms, and sex magic. Grey magic. Grey magic is essentially a mixture of black and white magic. For beginners, it is often practiced unintentionally when a spell goes slightly wrong, but adept witches and occult practitioners use it intentionally to align with their goals. There is such a thing as too much positivity. Hedging. Hedging is an alternate state of consciousness similar to astral projection that is used for exploring different planes of existence, spirit communication, and introspection. Bible mistranslations. It's pretty common knowledge that the Bible can be contradictory, but a little less known fact is that the Bible has been mistranslated. Additionally, language has changed drastically over the centuries, and the meanings and connotations of certain words have changed. As a result, some conclusions that most people come to nowadays can be incorrect or at least incomplete. But general consensus among witches nowadays is that, unlike how the Bible portrays it, witchcraft is not inherently evil and can be used for both good and bad. It is believed that ancient Hebrew and Greek, the languages the Bible was originally written in, had many different words for witches and sorcerers that meant different things, and originally the word that meant witches who only practiced black magic was used before its translation into English. This led to the incorrect assumption that anyone who practiced any kind of magic was evil and should be condemned to death. Christian witchcraft. After realising that the Bible has been mistranslated and discovering what witchcraft actually entails, one can reach the conclusion that Christian witchcraft is actually possible and okay. There are actually quite large communities online of Christian witches, eclectic Christians, open Christians, Christian mystics, and light workers who practice Christianity. Christianity and occultism are not mutually exclusive and can be combined in many ways. Thought forms and tulpas. A thought form is an umbrella term for objects, beings, or entities that are created with the mind. Thought forms can be created unintentionally, and some people believe that some hauntings are caused by unintentionally created thought forms. The terms thought form and tulpa are mostly used interchangeably, but personally I consider a thought form to be an umbrella term and a tulpa to be a more specific thought form that has a level of sentience. According to Wikipedia, a tulpa is a being or object which is created through spiritual or mental powers. Modern practitioners use the term to refer to a type of wheeled imagined being which practitioners consider to be sentient and relatively independent. Luciferianism. Luciferianism is basically a type of paganism where followers work with Lucifer, the name for Satan before he became a fallen angel. Luciferians work with all aspects of Lucifer, both before and after he became Satan. According to Wikipedia, followers of Luciferianism usually revere Lucifer not as the devil, but as a destroyer, guardian, liberator, and illuminator to darkness. Not all Luciferians are theistic, and merely worship him as a positive archetype, similar to Levian Satanism. Some theistic Luciferians do work with his darker aspects though, but overall they consider Lucifer as a guardian spirit or mentor. Luciferianism is considered entirely separate from Satanism, as Luciferians views Lucifer as a lightbringer and liberator, whereas Satan is viewed as an adversary and associated with materialism and cultural apathy. Sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is basically an umbrella term for shapes that are given mystic or spiritual properties. It has many branches in Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, and occultism in general. A famous example of sacred geometry is the pentacle. Servitor. A servitor is a type of thought form. A servitor is an entity, quote, specifically created by the magician to perform a set range of tasks, unquote. Phil Hine writes that servitors are created, quote, by deliberately budding off portions of our psyche and identifying them by means of a name, trait, or symbol, after which we can come to work with them and understand how they affect us at a conscious level. Servitors can be created to perform a wide range of tasks and may be considered as expert systems which are able to modify themselves to take into account new factors that arise. They can be programmed to work within specific circumstances or be operating continually. Hermeticism. Hermeticism refers to a wide variety of philosophical teachings but most commonly refers to a collection of Hermetic writings known as the Hermetica, the most famous of which, the Corpus Hermeticum, was written between 100 and 300 AD. Some of the main teachings consist of God as the All, true theology exists in all religions, the famous as above so below paraphrase, and reincarnation, among other things. Hermeticism has provided inspiration for Freemasonry, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Rosicrucianism, and esoteric Christianity. As we know, Wicca was influenced somewhat by Thelema, which was influenced somewhat by the Golden Dawn, which was influenced by Hermeticism. So we can see some very basic similarities between Wicca and Hermeticism, and this serves to perpetuate the idea that all religion converges on the same basic concepts, which will be relevant later in the iceberg. Gnosis. Gnosis is an alternate state of consciousness where the mind is focused solely on one thought, concept, or idea. It is used to bypass the quote-unquote filter of the conscious mind thought to be necessary for working most forms of magic. It is mostly reached through meditation, breathing exercises, or various methods of arousal and excitation, but some people try to get there by fasting, sleep deprivation, or substances. The latter is not recommended for obvious reasons. Keys of Solomon. The Keys of Solomon refers to the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon. The former was written in the 14th and 15th centuries and is often attributed to King Solomon. It contains instructions for different magical operations. The Lesser Key of Solomon was influenced by the Key of Solomon, but has a number of differences. The Lesser Key, compiled in the mid-17th century, is primarily a grimoire on demonology, divided into 5 books, the most famous of which is referred to as the Goetia, or the Goetia. These works provided inspiration for the Golden Dawn and other secret societies and ideologies. Setianism. Setianism began as an offshoot from LaVeyan Satanism due to infighting within the Church of Satan, where Michael Aquino, dissatisfied with the direction LaVey was taking the church, decided to create the Temple of Set, after apparently Satan told him that his true name was Set, like the Egyptian god. Setianism is similar to Satanism in many ways, except for the fact that the majority of Setians are theistic and believe that Set is a real god and that he has aided humanity by giving them intellect. Those interested in joining the Temple of Set are encouraged to submit an application through a Setian priest or priestess, which is followed by a period of evaluation. The temple is comprised of 6 degrees, starting at Setian, Adept, Priest, Priestess, Magister or Magistra Templi, and finally Ipsissimus or Ipsissima. Necromancy. Necromancy is the practice of communing with spirits, particularly incarnate spirits, that is, spirits of people who used to live as humans on Earth, but now they have passed on. A lot of witches communicate and work with their ancestors to assist them in their craft. There are lots of ways to do necromancy, and these are split into 2 main types: higher vibrational methods and lower vibrational methods. The former consists of things like meditation, hedging, and dream work, and the latter consists of any physical tools that are used, like pendulums, tarot cards, and famously Ouija boards. Blood magic. Blood magic is any kind of magic involving blood. It is supposedly very powerful and has more levels of permanence compared to other more beginner-friendly methods. Contrary to popular belief, blood magic is not inherently evil and does not involve sacrificing animals and babies and whatnot. Blood magic is a tool that can be used for bad and good, just like any other type of magic. Only a few drops are needed, and therefore, health-wise, it is not any more dangerous than a diabetic pricking their finger for a test. Blood magic can become an option for witches when other weaker methods have failed, for example protection or banishing. You can also use alternatives for blood if you're uncomfortable using real blood, like coconut water, urine, or saliva. As always, you should practice blood magic safely. Make sure tools and surfaces are sanitized, do not drink blood, yours or otherwise, and only use a few drops of blood at a time. Hermetic Kabbalah. The Hermetic Kabbalah is the underlying philosophy and framework for magical societies such as the Golden Dawn and Thelemic orders, and is a precursor to the neo-pagan, Wiccan, and New Age movements. It teaches that there is no strict separation between divinity and humankind, known as pantheism. It describes the origin of the emanation of creation through the tree of life, and describes the order of the angels. Demonology. Demonology is the study and practice of working with demons, also known as demonolatry. Demonology is not without its dangers, but it's not as dangerous as popular media portrays it. Most witches stay away from it because of the constant fearmongering and prevalent inaccurate information, but some witches do practice it. The main things about working with demons is that it's very similar to working with deities, except that demons tend to be more stubborn, feisty, willing to walk away if you offend them, and their morals can be questionable and or flexible. They are kind of like spiritual businessmen in a way. They can be dangerous because of their morals and priorities are not always aligned with mankind, and also the tendency to not bother with protecting you from other entities while you are in commune with them. When communicating with deities or spirit guides, they will protect you from lower vibrational entities who may interfere or wreak havoc, but demons don't tend to provide such protection. Thus, the common side effects that occur when communicating with demons are not caused by the demons themselves, but rather the entities that tag along for the ride. The reasons why some people choose to work with demons over deities and angels is that demons tend to get stuff done with no nonsense in a businessman-like manner. But of course, demonolatry should be approached with caution and is not recommended for beginners. Sex magic. Sex magic is basically a technique for working magic that involves sexual acts. It can be used for most other things that other types of magic is used for. It usually involves the practitioner climaxing whilst focusing their intent on their magical goal. Angels equal demons. It's pretty common knowledge that in Christianity, demons are just fallen angels. But what this implies is that demons have the very same level of knowledge and abilities that angels have, and when you really get deep into demonology, the lines between demons and angels can blur. Demons can be responsible for quote-unquote good things, and angels can be responsible for quote-unquote bad things. Furthermore, I previously described the reasons that people work with demons, but additional reasons include trauma work, and working through difficult situations like abuse and pain. Demons understand the human psyche, and they understand suffering very similarly to angels, but on an even deeper and raw level. Christians use magic. Put simply, there is an argument to be had that Christians misunderstand their teachings and scriptures to the point where they can't recognise magic when it's staring them in the face. Some Christian teachings originated from Hermeticism, but have been perverted for their own purposes, and perhaps in order to hold control over the masses. A lot of Christians exploring that which is often forbidden by Christianity often find that dangerous practices are not actually as dangerous as they seem on the surface, and even make the argument that all Christians practice magic in the form of prayers and rituals. This is especially true for Catholicism. Manifestation equals witchcraft. Manifestation is just a rebranded version of witchcraft to make it appealing to the masses. Anyone who says that they're practicing manifestation is actually practicing witchcraft, because there is no difference, as much as they may wish to deny it. This kind of ties into the whole Christians practice witchcraft thing. Christians use manifestation in the form of prayer and other rituals. Tier 5, Oathbound. A lot of these entries here are common knowledge among only those who are bound by oath as part of their society, the deities or entities they work with, or extreme levels of dedication. Therefore, public knowledge on these concepts is extremely limited, and most of it is speculation and hearsay. True Tarot. Basically, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn has their own version of tarot that is supposedly the quote-unquote true tarot that contains the actual real symbolism. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck intentionally included false symbolism in order for the creators, A.E. Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith, to maintain their oaths to the order. This doesn't really matter too much though, because if you follow chaos philosophy then you believe in anything that brings results, and the many versions of tarot around today do manifest results. All tarot decks today are valid, but are considered quote-unquote incorrect according to the Golden Dawn. Secret societies. It is no secret that secret societies exist. Some of the most famous of these include, or used to include, the Golden Dawn, Freemasonry, and the Rosicrucian Fellowship. Such societies often practice witchcraft, magic, and other forms of occultism. The only things we know about them are what they choose to make public. For example, the previous entry on this iceberg about the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, where some symbolism was falsified on purpose in order to protect the teachings of the Golden Dawn. Unfortunately, I do have to mention cults, not that I want to. I will just refer to them as fringe groups to avoid upsetting the YouTube gods. Fringe groups often include witchcraft and occultism as part of their teachings, and some can divulge into absolute degeneracy. It's important to remember that not all fringe groups base their teachings in occultism, and pretty much every religion has their extremists. Witchcraft and occultism probably has more than their fair share, but let me make clear that the vast, overwhelming majority of witches are not members of fringe groups. They are just normal people living their lives. I just want to say that, on a personal level, any fringe groups who claim to be witches but also promote harmful ideologies are not witches. They are just assholes who should probably go to prison. I think it's important to know the signs and symptoms of a fringe group, so if you come across any of these signs on screen now, stay away. Ouija boards work. This entry basically refers to the conspiracy theory that Ouija boards work, and they work very well. So the government, or groups that otherwise rule over us, have perpetuated large amounts of fear-mongering in order to stop the general public from finding the truth. Now, here's my 2 cents as an actual witch who has previously used Ouija boards. I am of the opinion that Ouija boards basically work like dreams, so you can experience pretty wacky stuff, but it is harmless for as long as you remember it's not real, like dreams. So you can gain insight from dreams and use them for guidance, but don't take them too seriously because they are just dreams. Ouija boards are pretty much the same in my opinion. If you're wondering, well, why do people experience hauntings and possession and all that kind of crap, a simple explanation was given in a previous entry. People don't understand how Ouija boards work, and they have so much fear surrounding them that they can actually unintentionally create thought forms that manifest in the appearance of demons and ghosts and poltergeists and whatnot. This is not to say that Ouija boards aren't dangerous, but just that I'm of the belief that they are dangerous because we believe that they are dangerous, and therefore we can, accidentally create very powerful thought forms that can be dangerous. Mitigating the threefold law. It is rumoured that when you get adept enough at witchcraft, you can essentially ignore the threefold law or any kind of law of attraction because you can develop ways to mitigate it or otherwise get around it. This would of course be extremely powerful information, so there is not much known about it. Transcending duality. This is basically the ultimate goal of some occult practitioners. Transcending duality is basically to see the world as not a binary system, but instead as complex and not black and white. Nothing is what it seems, and even when it seems obvious, all that kind of stuff. It involves death of the ego and viewing oneself as neither light nor dark, neither male nor female, neither physical nor formless, etc. Good and bad and black and white are merely illusion. Psychonautics. A psychonaut is someone who uses substances in order to explore spirituality and other planes of existence, and attain knowledge about the nature of reality. Some witches practice psychonautics, normally using herbs like mugwort, or a chemical that rhymes with shell, nest, bee, but this is seen less commonly among witches. This is obviously not a recommended practice for beginners, because substances are kind of illegal. Don't worry about it. Past life regression is BS. To the general public, yeah, past life regression is obviously BS. Everyone always claims that they've been Cleopatra or Leonardo da Vinci or something. But the reason it's this low on the iceberg is that people don't realise why past life regression is bullshit, but still is useful. If you are a pantheist or omnitheist, you believe that there is no separation between humankind and divinity. And to make a very long story short, we are all connected under a single greater consciousness and therefore have the ability to access not just all of our past lives, but the past life of every single person on Earth who ever lived, is living, and will live. So basically, when you practice past life regression, you just access the past lives that have the most relevance to you or resonate most with your spirit or whatever. In essence, this is like the past lives that contain the most information that is relevant to you currently. That is why most people claim to be, famous historical leaders, because they are people we generally most benefit from. If that made literally no sense, I suggest watching The Egg by Kurtzgard, which gives a little more context to what I mean by pantheism and, having access to everyone's past lives and stuff. Public figures have magical protection. This entry is, just speculation, but people who have astral projected in order to visit or communicate with famous public figures claim that they always have other astral entities on the astral plane protecting them and preventing you from coming close to said public figure. This has various implications, as you can imagine. True closed practices. This entry refers to practices that are secret to the general public. That is, practices that require one to be officially initiated by a minister or elder belonging to said tradition or practice. We do not know what truly closed practices are because they are protected by their tradition, religion, or society. People who hold a more conservative view on closed practices say that you can practice anything that is in the public domain. For example, if you find ritual instructions on the internet, then you can practice it and nothing is stopping you. You can only be stopped from practicing something if it is secret and you need to be initiated in order to even know about it. This is what some witches mean when they say closed practices, but for the most part, closed practices refers to the meaning I explained back in Tier 2. Dimensional shifting. This is the theory that parallel realities exist and we can visit them. This can often be done by accident too, and is usually done while in a sleep state. The difference between dimensional shifting and dreaming, however, is that things you do during a dimensional shift have real-world consequences for that dimension. So you can actually swoop in and fuck up a real person's life who lives in that dimension. This can actually be used to give an explanation for mysterious mental conditions like dissociative fugue disorder, for example. This is pure speculation, of course. Don't take it seriously. Where witchcraft comes in is that some witches, particularly seers and psychics, can sometimes temporarily enter or take over someone's body in another dimension and do various things. This is normally done with the purpose of learning something about the nature of reality, or a similar purpose to past life regression, except instead of visiting a past life, you are visiting a current life in another dimension. Recently there has been a trend on TikTok of people practicing dimensional shifting. However, that trend is extremely far removed from witchcraft and any kind of logic for that matter, and is basically just a bunch of teenagers pretending to be Harry Potter characters so they can bone each other. Yeah, TikTok is a terrible place.
Manifestation is a scam. So I'm going to be explaining this entry with my webcam because I forgot to record it when I was doing my voiceover. So this entry refers to so-called gurus who market off of spirituality and just spout lies, or at least partial truths. You can spot these kind of people very easily. They are unapologetically positive and happy, and they use buzzwords like manifestation, law of attraction, starseed, high vibration, source energy, love and light.
There is no such thing as a coincidence. The fact that you're watching this video means you are energetically aligned with me and this message. Your thoughts create your reality. But you already knew that, yet you still live a life that you dread.
You getting it, you've seen those people. So these kind of gurus, spiritual leaders, they'll often take Eastern concepts and kind of turn them into their own thing to suit their purposes. Sometimes they even tell you to start changing your diet, you know, detoxifying your body, drink these detox drinks, that kind of stuff. And some of these gurus and spiritual leaders might even tell you that you have to travel to certain places, certain countries, buy their super expensive courses. So a lot of them are just siphoning money out of you and just feeding you lies or partial truths. This really toxic positivity is actually really harmful. You can't just pretend that everything is fine or that there's nothing wrong and to not even think about any negativity. You know, life is full of shit and you can't just ignore it by saying, oh, well, this is happening to me because it's a lesson to me and I should be happy about it. It's just like, if you lost your job and your house, or like your dog died, I don't know, that's not something to be happy about. Sometimes you gotta be sad and process those emotions, or even something worse, something traumatic happens to you. And they'll just tell you, oh, your higher spirit chose this. It's really unhealthy because this can then turn into like, oh, so your higher spirit chose for you to be abused as a child. It's like, no. Life is shit. Sometimes shit things happen. And you do not have to be positive and happy all the time. That's not the answer either. Toxic positivity is a thing. So a lot of these teachers just teaching you that all you gotta do is think positive and visualize your goal. That's not the full story. Visualization, yeah, sure. But you also have to take action and do the things that are necessary. This is what witchcraft is all about. We cast the spell, but we also do the things that are necessary, do the things that work. Spells just help. Thankfully, I don't see this kind of stuff like gurus, spiritual teachers, as much in the witchcraft community. It's mostly new age spirituality. I do think that this is because witches are mostly associated with positivity and negativity, like we use both a lot. So yeah, we do use the same things that new age practitioners do, the law of attraction, visualization, manifestation, but witches also tend to balance out this stuff with banishing, shadow work, grey magic. We literally have a holiday all about death in the form of Halloween, or we call it Cowan, but you call it Halloween. It's just really healthy to acknowledge death, acknowledge the dark side of things. If you're not acknowledging those things, you're not healthy and you're not gonna be a powerful witch, a powerful person. We often have a saying in the witchcraft community, or at least on the witchy side of Reddit, which is do no harm but take no shit, and I think that sums up witchcraft pretty well. I know I said that this entry doesn't affect witchcraft as much, but it's definitely a slippery slope. Just people trying to market off of spirituality and witchcraft. You see it on Amazon and Audible with all the fake authors, just companies writing fake witchcraft books. I actually made a video all about this if you need more information on that. And witchcraft subscription boxes, a lot of them aren't even created by witches. It's just people marketing off of the consumerism of witchcraft. I've really noticed that consumerism is really taking off with witchcraft. It's not all good. Like, people think that witches need so much stuff and they need lots of tools, but it's not true, and you don't need a lot of stuff. If you spot like one of these gurus or spiritual teachers online, I'm gonna put a list of some of the signs and like red flags so you know that you should stay away or at least take their advice with a pinch of salt. If you see these signs on screen now, those are red flags, and do not take their advice and do not give them money. Run a mile in the opposite direction, I don't care.
Tier 6. Ascended. We have truly fallen off the deep end here. Anyone who describes themselves as an expert in these topics will appear pretty incoherent to the general public. It is very difficult to attain this kind of knowledge about the universe and maintain a mundane human life. Akashic Records. This entry refers to the belief that all things that existed, currently exist, will exist, and could exist, all exist on the mental plane, and these events are known as Akashic records. Seers and psychics can be trained to access Akashic records, but the difficulty comes in when identifying what exists in our reality and what exists only in one's imagination. It was an idea conceptualized by Theosophists during the 19th century and has allegedly been used to access information on the lost city of Atlantis. The Mushroom Conspiracy. Basically, the fly agate mushroom is present within so much media and so many religious images, and every single Christmas tradition can be traced back to Siberian shamanism through this mushroom. Everything from there has been basically stolen and eventually turned into the Christmas we know today. Religious imagery, long story short, religious imagery shows that Jesus is the living embodiment of the spirit of fly agate. Santa was originally a Siberian deity who lived in the north and to this day has the colour scheme of the fly agate. Furthermore, the Siberian people would feed reindeer this mushroom to make them quote-unquote fly, and these mushrooms grow underneath pine trees, the very same trees used as Christmas trees. Once you notice the fly agate and its importance in religion throughout history, you can never go back. It is everywhere. Fly agate is always there. This iceberg entry is fully explained in an episode of the Outer Hour podcast called Fly Agate, and I personally haven't stopped thinking about it ever since. Celebrities practice black magic. This is basically the conspiracy theory that celebrities gain their fame from practicing black magic and or making a deal with the devil. This conspiracy theory is partially related to the theoretical 27 Club conspiracy, which is a group of celebrities who died tragically young, and some were rumoured to have made deals with the devil. Oneness. Oneness is the ultimate goal of some occult practitioners, and basically the experience of being unified with the universe. This is possible due to there being no separation between divinity and humankind, pantheism, hinted at earlier in the iceberg. But what this implies is the reason why it's down here on the iceberg. If every single conscience belongs to a single collective consciousness, that means that you are essentially everyone. So when you meet a new person, you are meeting another aspect of yourself. This is one of the meanings behind the phrase namaste, which according to sociologist Holly Oxhandler means the sacred in me recognizes the sacred in you. The darker implications of this are more disturbing though. This means that every murderer, every rapist, every depraved, degenerate human being is an aspect of yourself and is part of you. When you achieve oneness, you are not only one with everything that is great about the universe, but also everything that is painful, depraved, and truly disturbing. Again, if this literally makes no sense to you, I implore you to watch Kurtzgaard's video titled The Egg. There's also another weird and disturbing thing related to oneness that I want to talk about. I know I said I didn't want to cover any Eastern concepts, but I think this is at least worth mentioning. So there's a concept in Hindu or yogic traditions where you can achieve such high levels of oneness that you could literally die. This idea is called Mahasamadhi, and basically is believed that the one who achieves this state of enlightenment can consciously choose to leave their body to go onto further ascension. So your physical body literally dies while you go on to be at one with the universe or divinity, and you consciously make this decision. The afterlife. This entry is pretty self-explanatory. We do not know the nature of the afterlife. Even people who practice necromancy only get a few tantalizing clues. Those who practice necromancy know that there must be some sort of afterlife, because how else would necromancy even work? But what the true nature of it is, we do not know. Reportedly, incarnate spirits have said that it is physical like our reality, but reaching our reality is a is as difficult for them as it is difficult for us to reach theirs. Forms of paganism, notably Wicca, believe in reincarnation, but it is not clear if there is anything after a number of cycles of reincarnation. True reality. Similar to the afterlife, we do not know the nature of true reality or what it even looks like. We know our perception on reality is limited by what our brains are capable of processing, and they're only this way because of our basic need to survive and evolution over millions of years. But witches and spiritual practitioners see hints that there is something more to our reality, and that there may be other planes of existence that we can't normally perceive, and other beings that exist on those planes. So how many planes are there? What are these beings capable of perceiving, and what are the limits to their abilities? We only perceive reality in 3 dimensions, but there could be so many more, and we pretty much know how the 4th dimension would work, but we're incapable of seeing it, and only the greatest minds of all time have been able to even imagine it. There are theories that witchcraft and occultism may hold the key to unlocking an unfiltered perception on the true nature of reality, and some witches have claimed to see temporary glimpses of it. Real magic. This entry refers to practices that are so secret and mysterious that any level-headed person would say that they don't exist. This is things like levitation, telekinesis, and transfiguration. The only clues that we have for the existence of such magic is that described in mythology and the Bible. The Bible describes many quote-unquote miracles and mysterious events that are physically impossible, which gives rise to the existence of some sort of unknown real magic. Perhaps it exists, but is kept within the confines of secret societies or governing bodies, or maybe the knowledge about this kind of magic has been lost forever.
So that was the Witchcraft Iceberg. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. If you made it this far, like I know this is going to be over an hour and a half, I'm pretty sure. If you made it this far into the video, please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate you staying to watch this long. If you're into witchcraft and occultism and you're really into these kind of videos, please subscribe because I really want to make more of them. If you are a witch and you do have to practice in secret, that is what my channel is all about, so please check out my other videos. But if you're new here and you have no interest in practicing witchcraft, thank you very much for coming. Consider subscribing anyway, because I really want to make more videos kind of like this. Maybe not iceberg videos, but kind of like this. So that's the end of the video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Feel free to ask me any questions. Like I said, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time in another video. Thank you very much.